All right, here's the 5.2 homework assignment. 14 questions. They might get a little bit tedious. This might be a little too long. I don't know, hard to tell. But I really wanted you to have the unit circle memorized after this homework. So I put a few different unit circle questions on. This first one, for example, just asks you for the x and y coordinates of all of the 16 memorized points on your unit circle. So typing them in might be a little bit obnoxious, but really this is a good test for you. You can kind of see, can you draw something like this and label all the different points with their x's and y's? And if so, then just copy them into the respective boxes and you should be good to go. Question 2, more with the unit circle, except now what you're supposed to do is plot the point where theta equals negative 210 degrees. So find negative 210 degrees somewhere on here and put the little dot where it is. And that's it. So at least this one will go a lot quicker than the first one, as long as you know how to measure that angle. 3, it's the same idea, except now instead of the angle being given in degrees, it's given in radians, but find negative pi over 3. Put your little dot down and you can move on. Question 4, same idea where we're drawing the answer, but here you're supposed to plot the two different points, there should be two of them, where sine of the angle equals negative root 2 over 2. So maybe you can think about whether this is telling you the x or y coordinate, and then you can locate the 2 points that have that x or y coordinate down here. Question 5, kind of the same idea, except now you're not drawing anything. They pick the point for you. So it's going to randomly select one of the 16 memorized points on your unit circle, and you have to be able to tell it what the angle is measured in degrees and measured in radians. You want the angle between 0 and 2 pi or 0 and 360 degrees, and then also give it the x and y coordinates of that point. And I think you do that twice. Question 6 is the exact same, except that since it randomly selects the point, presumably the point will be in a different spot for you. But again, the angle in degrees, radians, the x and the y coordinates of that point. Then question 7 gets into sine and cosine. So they give you an angle. This should be coterminal with one of the points on your unit circle, the memorized values, and maybe you could figure out the sine and the cosine of that angle. Same idea with number 8 here, where you want the sine and cosine of an angle. It's just a different angle that they give you here as opposed to here. Similarly, in question 9, I guess the way it randomly selects numbers, this shows up a little bit weird, but this one meant pi over 4, although I suspect it's going to randomly change the 1 in the numerator on all your different versions of this. And then we move into the last type of problem on this homework where they refer to a point on the unit circle that's not one of the memorized values. So we don't know the angle that's referring to this point, but they do tell us the y coordinate of this point, and they tell us the quadrant that point lies in. So maybe you can use the equation of the unit circle to figure out the x coordinate of that point. And same idea down here, we're in a different quadrant, and now they're telling us the x coordinate. Maybe you can use that information to figure out the y coordinate. 12 and 13 are just like 10 and 11, except instead of telling you the x or the y coordinate, they tell you the sine of an angle or the cosine of an angle in these two problems. But that's really the same information as long as you know which of cosine and sine correspond with the x coordinate and correspond with the y coordinate. So 12 and 13 should end up being a lot like 10 and 11 after the first step. And then finally, 14, the extra credit question. This is a true extra credit question here. This is not something I've shown you how to do, and it's not something you're required to know how to do for this class. But what they're getting at is we're supposed to find an angle in between 0 and 360 that has the same sine as 260 degrees. And you're like, that's easy. Let me just go to my unit circle and figure out what the sine of 260 degrees is. Problem. 260 degrees is not one of the memorized values on your unit circle, but that's okay. Even though it's not one of the memorized values on your unit circle, maybe you can draw a picture of the unit circle and figure out where 260 degrees would be, and then figure out, okay, what would be another angle that has the same sine that 260 degrees does. So even without knowing what the sine of 260 degrees is, just knowing that the sine is the y coordinate on the unit circle, maybe you could find another point on your unit circle that has that same y coordinate. I think you'll have to exploit some of the symmetries of the circle to figure out what that angle is. I don't think it's easy or obvious at all, but if you can figure out the two of these guys, you can get yourself some extra credit. That's that homework assignment.